Now, to examine the impacts of human-made chemicals such as BPA, right, is just one of the aspects of this broad field of environmental health. So, in this segment, we assess the environmental factors that influence our health and the quality of life. So these factors include natural aspects of the environment over which we have little control about, as well as the one there's no human cause factors. Like the practitioners of this kind of research, environmental health, they are trying to seek to prevent adverse effects on the human health and also on the ecological system that are very essential to our well-being. So we face 4 types of environmental hazards. So first, the physical hazard, the chemical hazard, the biological hazard, and the cultural hazard. And after this, I will elaborate on each of them. So first up, for physical hazards. These hazards arise from processes that occur naturally in our environment and pose risk to the human life or health. So some of these physical processes, right, they are ongoing natural phenomena, something ongoing every day, like UV radiation from the sun. And too much exposure to the UV radiation, we know that it damages our DNA, and it has been linked to the skin cancer, cataract, and immune suppression. So what we can do is, right, we can reduce our exposure and the risk from the UV light by using clothing that blocks most of our skin from there, and a sunscreen to shield it from the intense sunlight. However, so you know that in the Islamic countries, the ladies, they have to wear the kabaya, right, to not to show some skins there. So it's discovered that these ladies, they have a lower amount of calcium in the body, and perhaps it's because of a lack of sunlight that induces the body to generate more of this calcium for the bones. So there's a downside towards having fair skin, carrying umbrella, not getting the UV light, but we need some of this UV light to make our bones stronger. Now there are other physical hazards that they are like discrete events like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, fires, floods, blizzards, landslide, hurricane, you name it, Hurricane Maria, Irma, Harvey, droughts. So these are things that we can do little to predict, the timing of these natural disasters. And we cannot prevent one because they're so natural, right? But what we can do is we can minimize the risk by preparing ourselves. So the second hazard that we're talking about, not Eden, or Torn, chemical hazards. So these include many of the synthetic chemicals that our society manufactured, all man-made. Now, the pharmaceuticals, the drugs, disinfectants, pesticides, and some of these substances that are produced naturally by organisms, like snake venom, spiders. So we find this in nature and then we process it for our own use, like crude oil, lead, asbestos. These are natural occurring chemicals. And we have biological hazards. So these result from the ecological interaction among the organism. And when we become sick, right, from some virus, bacterial infection, when we get injured or other pathogens, we are actually suffering from what? Parasitism. By other species, they are using our body as a host site to fulfill their ecological role. So that's why we call them infectious diseases. So these infectious diseases such as malaria, cholera, TB, influenza like flu, so these are major environmental health hazards, and that's especially true for developing nations with widespread poverty and those with few resources for healthcare. Singapore is very lucky, we have a very good healthcare system, but that comes at a price. Next, we go through the cultural hazards. So these are hazards that result from our workplace, residence, socio-economic status, what class, we come from, our job, like my job here as an instructor in the university, we have lab sessions we're exposed to, every other day. It's not that healthy. So these are also linked to our choices, our behaviors, in our habits, everyday life. So we call them the cultural hazards or lifestyle hazards. And we can minimize or prevent some of these, by even changing jobs, by changing our lifestyle. But some of these are beyond our control, and I tell you why is that so. So next time you find a job, you do internship, right? You may be a non-smoker, but you live and work with people who smoke. So therefore, you increase the chance of getting lung cancer from the secondhand smoke. So choosing to smoke is a personal behavior decision. So it's not like, hey friend, come on, I don't like smoke. Please stop smoking. Unless it's a law saying that, okay, right here there's no smoking, and if the fella is smoking, then you can say, okay, I'm going to tell the teacher. So NUS is a non-smoking campus. You can't smoke anywhere on campus. And the government is going to propose a law to raise the minimum age for smoking to 21 sooner or later. So these are things that are beyond one's control, and that influences the personal choice and a forced decision, like maybe a gang of friends wants to smoke but you're a non-smoker, but then you just suffer with them. So what else? What else are cultural hazards? Maybe the food diet, maybe you're very health conscious, but then you succumb to peer pressure. All your friends like to have junk food, eat with them, to bond and chat, and there are no other kinds of food, so you sacrifice yourself. You allow a bit more toxins coming from the not so healthy food. And also cultural hazards come from the mode of transport you take. Maybe a bus, if you cycle, you're exposed to the road's pollution. If you take the MRT, maybe the air inside is not so great. Or you take someone's car, they have a strong kind of perfume inside there. So this varies, but you get the idea. Now, among the hazards people that face, the disease that stands preeminent. So despite our technological advances, what we have gone so far as human, we still find ourselves every day battling a disease that causes a lot of deaths every day in the world. Now, these major killers, right, like cancer, heart diseases, respiratory disorders, they have some genetic basis. So, it is affected by the genes of your ancestors. But they are also influenced by the environmental factors, genes getting turned on and turned off, activated. So, for example, whether a person develops asthma depends not only on the person's genes, but also on the environmental conditions. And there are studies that have shown that the pollutants from fossil fuels combustion, they worsen the asthma. Not trolling. And the children who are raised in the farms, they suffer less asthma than children raised in cities. So there must be some kind of cause and link between them. It can't be just coincidental. And malnutrition, poverty, poor hygiene, all these, they will foster other diseases, other illnesses. So the lifestyle choices matter. Like smoking leads to lung cancer, and the lack of exercise means you're more likely to have heart diseases. So over half the world's death, result from the non-infectious disease, like even obesity, kidney diseases, cancer. And infectious disease account almost in about 1 for every 4 adults every year, a quarter, 25%. Every year, about 15 million people in the world die. So infectious disease is a greater problem in what kind of countries? Developing countries, not all, because it's not proportionally distributed. Infectious disease, in the developing countries, because they don't have a good healthcare system, poor sanitation, they are more prone to these kind of illnesses. And it accounts for about half of their death. So there are fewer deaths in the developed nations because the wealth, allows the citizens to have better public sanitation, hygiene, and that will also reduce the chance of contracting infectious disease. And even if they contract the disease, they have more accessibility to better hospitals to receive treatment. So in a world of global mobility and dense human populations, there are many new diseases and of course new strains of the old disease that emerge in one location, like we have seen in the past. So pathogen can now hop from continent to continent, countries to countries, borders to borders within a matter of hours by plane because we are so accessible now, we are traveling. These diseases are very widespread. Some example you've seen a few years ago, the SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, 2003. I still remember I was a student there, I really must take the temperature thermometer during assembly. And H5N1 avian flu, which we call the bird flu, starting in 2004. That was a very close period. H1N1 swine flu, they spread across the globe. It was in 2009 to 2010. So in addition to these natural strains of disease, there's a growing concern of bioterrorism, terrorist attack, and the intentional genetic manipulation of a pathogenic organism to increase its virulence or transmission between humans. So people are trying to stop, find a way to stop this kind of transmission of pathogens in case of terrorism. Now, this issue actually received a lot of attention worldwide. 5 years ago in 2012, when someone published in the top journal, highest impact called Nature. If you can, as a scientist, please publish there. Now, they describe how the scientists genetically engineered a strain of the H5N1 avian flu to make it even more transmissible through the air. Now, what happens, right, when you tell people how to make a very, very good bomb? So they say that, then now you're giving them, terrorists, the recipe to make the bomb that can kill us, right? So there's a critic saying that, wow, GG, you provide them with this recipe and then that's it. But the proponents say that, wait, come on, these are good information to share. So it will help the governments, in fact all the governments in the world, to track and even better contain the virulent strains of this H5N1 by having more information to suppress it in case there's a breakout. So the change that we cause to the environment can cause the disease to spread. And the human-induced global warming is causing tropical diseases like malaria, dengue, cholera, yellow fever. They begin to even expand to other regions that are not tropical, to the temperate zones. And any change and alteration in the habitat can also affect the abundance and distribution and the movement of certain disease factors.